Good afternoon. Welcome to our market replay training session for Recoil Surf. In this video, we're going to go over in depth how to start our market replay backtesting, split testing, and what to look for and what goals we should have with our market replay backtesting. First, I'd like to go over why we use market replay for backtesting as opposed to the strategy analyzer tool, which is included in NinjaTrader. The strategy analyzer, go ahead and take a look under File, New Strategy Analyzer. Now, this is a handy tool, but it does have its limitations, especially with the type of bar types we use, since this strategy analyzer for backtesting purposes doesn't include all of the tick data that happens while a bar builds. And this tick data is very important for Recoil as it evaluates trades to look for. So this doesn't give us the whole picture, and as even stated in the user's guide on NinjaTrader, that it is roughly 65% accurate. So this isn't going to give us the fullest picture or accurate results for backtesting that we want. So we're going to use market replay instead. So to get started with market replay, we do need to download some data. You may have NinjaTrader set up to automatically record each day, but you can also download individual days. So we come to File, Utilities, and Download Replay Data. And here we'll be able to select our instrument and the date. And we want to make sure to select L1 data as well as L2 data. So both these boxes need to be checked. And then once we select some day in the past, we can't download today's data because it's not complete yet. We'll click OK. And then in the lower right of our control center, we'll see a message letting us know that it is downloading our replay data. Now, setting up a market replay backtest is good to go over large periods of time all at once. It can take a few hours to run about a month's worth of data. So you may want to download all of your replay data in one sitting, which can take about 10 minutes or so. Now, an important thing to note is that if we go back far enough, we may need to switch contract dates. So if you don't have the correct contract date in your default list, you will have to go to the instrument manager and add the past contract dates to your default list so that we can select them. If I go back to January 2nd with the 04 contract and try to download data, it may only download partial data, so I may not get the full picture. So you want to make sure the days you download are also within the correct contract time. All right, so once we get the period of time we want to backtest for, we'll go ahead and disconnect from our data feed. And then we want to connect to market replay. And you may see your charts go black. That is because they don't have any data going to them yet. So, and you also see our little market replay player here. What I like to do is right click, come to available data, and this will let me see all of the data that I've downloaded. So here I see I only have a couple days, but it's enough to get started. So I see that I have the GC 1216 contract starting on November 2nd, 2016 and going to November 13th. Now you may notice some days don't have L2 data. These are typically weekends. And some days may occasionally just not have the data for some reason. It wasn't archived or saved correctly. All right, so I know my days. I'm going to start on 11/6. So first I want to open some charts. All right, so I've got my GC 1216. I'm going to go ahead and add my Recoil Trader to the chart. Choose my settings, my start and stop times. And this is a good opportunity to do some split testing where we can run the same market over the same period of time with slightly different settings and see if one performs better. And this way we can determine maybe with a certain setting we do take overall less trades but have a higher win ratio and don't have as much drawdown, and that may be better for our type of trading rather than having Recoil evaluate trades more liberally and get into more trades overall. While the end result may be more profit, there is also a greater potential for larger periods of drawdown. So that's part of the purpose of backtesting, is to determine the types of settings we want to use for recoil, whether we want to run it a little more conservatively or a little more aggressively. So this is a good way to compare results. And we would add it to a chart just like we were doing in a live market. So I do have one group of settings there, but I want to do some split testing. So I'm going to open up another chart here. And I'm going to add recoil to this chart as well. This time I'm going to set a few of my beta options to true. Now I do know that these are more conservative in general and strictly qualifies the trades, but I want to see how this compares to my other settings, as I may find that these results are more in my favor. While the overall profit may not be as great, I may find that the drawdown is very low comparatively, and that is something I'm looking for personally. So we want to make sure all settings are the same between them, start-stop times, except the settings we want to split test. So in the other first recoil, I did not have these beta options on. So that's what I'm going to be split testing. So I know that any differences are the results of those settings. All right, so now I have my two recoil traders active on separate charts with different settings. So I'm going to go ahead and select the day I want to go to, which was 11/6/2016, and I want to go ahead and start at 12 a.m. And then once that loads, since there were a couple days before the date I selected, you will see some data load in here. Once it loads, go ahead and hit play, and then we can speed this up to 500 times the normal speed, which generally you will want to do when you're testing long periods of time. And even at 500 times speed, the market replay can take 2 to 4 hours roughly, depending on your computer's processor speed and things like that. So we're going to let this run for a while and then come back and check our results. All right, so now we've let our market replay run for about 6 days, 5-6 days, and now we're going to compare our results from our split test. So we can see right off that there is a bit of a difference here, about $1,200 profit difference. So let's take a closer look at our results. And the way we can do that is we can right click on one of our recoil traders here, come down to strategy performance, and you want to make sure to select real time, as this will only display trades that recoil actually took in the market replay. If you choose historical in real time, it will also include trades that it looks for historically, which, similar to the strategy analyzer tool, is not entirely accurate. Change this to currency. So we see a max drawdown of $680. Not bad. Gross loss of $970 compared with the gross profit of $5,420. Total trades 83. 5 long trades. We had 100% accuracy on the long side and 87% accuracy on the short side, with the majority of trades being short. So, and we have some other metrics to compare. Let's go ahead and take a look at our second one and look at them side by side. So this one did result in roughly $1,200 more total profit, lower overall profit factor. We change this to currency. We do have the same amount of max drawdown, however, so it doesn't look like there was a huge difference there. And the gross loss is considerably more. So this just means we took more trades, a couple more winners and a couple more losers that kind of balanced that out. But ultimately, we ended up with more profit. So you can see this is the one we set up our beta settings on. Less overall trades. So you do have a bit less in commissions there. Less overall profit, still good amount of profit with a really excellent profit factor. And we see in our default recoil settings, more total profit, a bit more gross loss, which in the end, since the max drawdown was the same, doesn't seem like it's not that big of a negative. And a lower overall profit factor, just because we did take more trades overall, and a few of those were more losing trades as well. Still fairly close percent profitable, a little over 1% off. So overall, pretty close, but we can see that maybe I like this version on the left here a bit more. While I do limit my overall profit potential compared to having recoil run a bit more liberally, I take less gross loss and would likely, if we ran this for a longer period of time, would see this max drawdown probably be quite a bit less than the max drawdown on our more liberal version of recoil. So these are the kind of things we can check for doing these split tests. So if you want to compare the beta settings to our default settings, and then you can gauge which one works for your style of trading. Would you like a more consistent profit, higher profit factor, but perhaps a less overall profit while limiting your risk quite a bit? Then you'd probably want to turn the beta settings on. Or are you okay with risking a bit more on perhaps having more gross loss, even though the end result is more profit? So you likely have the potential for a larger max drawdown, even though it will recover. So that may be something to consider depending on your account size before you start trading live. So the market replay is very useful for backtesting, as you can see, as it lets us get data and better assess the settings we want to use and the type of trading style we want to set Recoil up for. In addition to split testing to see if certain settings are more effective on a particular instrument compared to other settings, we can also look at some additional data to determine if there are further adjustments we can make, such as start time, end time, and if we should use a lunch period for this particular instrument. So we'll come to our trades tab, where we can see all of the individual trades that Recoil made during this period of time. Now, since this was a rather brief market replay session, we may not have enough data to make that determination, but what I basically want to do is come through and look at any full stop, and I'm really concerned with the entry time. So here, the first one I see is on 11/9 at 6:42 a.m. So I want to make a note of that time and see if there are any more full stops around that same time period. It doesn't have to be right on, but maybe I'm interested within a half-hour period, 45 minutes or so. And if I see a pattern over a given amount of time, that may be a good idea to test a lunch period. And then I can rerun the same market replay with a lunch period and see if I can improve performance even more. So I have a few runners that got stopped out, but don't see too many full stops. So we may need just to run a little more time on the market replay to get a better assessment. Here I have another full stop a few days later on 11/10 at 10:19 a.m. Not really enough to gather a pattern here, and another one at 11:11 at 2:03. Not enough information, but given enough time, we may be able to see a pocket of time throughout the day that consistently seems to produce a losing trade. And adding in a lunchtime for that time period we've determined can help us to avoid a few more losing trades and improve the performance of Recoil Trader even more. So while Recoil Trader can be effective out of the box, we do have to remember that market behavior does change over time, and different instruments behave differently, just as different markets trade differently. The European market is different from the US market, and the Japanese market is different from both of those markets. So these are things to keep in mind, in that we can improve the performance by running these kinds of tests to collect data and make adjustments based on that data. So ultimately, Recoil is a tool we use to diversify our portfolio, so to speak, and it can really bolster our manual trading by running in the background on one or two markets, depending on what our goals for Recoil are. So being that it is a tool, we should familiarize ourselves with how best to use it and get the most out of it. And we can also look at the daily breakdown, see if there is a particular day of the week that would produce, or that would indicate a pattern where perhaps the instrument doesn't perform as strongly as other days. And another great function of the performance history is we can look at an actual chart, and it will show us all of the trades that Recoil took for the market replay period. So we can see our entries, exits, a dotted line from entry to exit indicating profit, as well as the stops Recoil had in place during that time. So using this, we can perhaps determine if trading into the higher low of the day doesn't seem to affect the performance overall. Then we can simply adjust our check OHLC setting to false and rerun the results and rerun the market replay to see if that can improve the performance as well. So ultimately, there are quite a few things we can do if the market seems choppy or less volatile. There are some things we can do to improve the performance of Recoil, which does take a little work, but as with any tool, it does take work and familiarizing yourself with it to use it effectively. Now, all of these same principles can also apply to sim trading. That is also an excellent way to split test settings on the live market. It does take a bit longer than market replay, and we may have to be a bit more studious, but it is quite helpful as well. Some things to keep in mind is that during these periods, whether it's market replay or sim trading, our main goal is to collect data to determine if we can make some improvements for some of these instruments. So we don't want to get too hung up on if it goes through a period of drawdown, as that is known to happen. When you look back through your market replay, you will see periodically there are times where there are quite a few consecutive losers, which often causes a period of drawdown, even though it does recover given enough time. So kind of key there is, and if we don't let this run for long enough, we won't see that or be able to make those adjustments so that Recoil can recover from periods of drawdown. If we run it for one day in sim and aren't happy with the results and then make an adjustment to the settings and let it run the next day and aren't really seeing an improvement, we don't have a way to zero in on what could be either causing the performance to be less than it could or improving the performance overall. So if you want to compare some settings on sim, you'll do much like we did here, which is load 2 Recoil traders on the same instrument with different settings, the settings you want to test, and then let it run for several weeks or a month on sim so we can collect a good amount of data. And then we can use that data to make some improvements and then perhaps run market replay for that same month period with our setting adjustments to see if we can isolate some times to put in a lunch break, some better start and stop times, or if some settings are more effective than others. But the key is to remain diligent. Don't get too caught up on the daily results of our test, as you will see some days go negative and then the next day may be entirely positive. So we want to look at it as we're trying to get a big picture on how we can most effectively use Recoil as the trading tool that it is. Thank you for watching our Recoil Surf market replay tutorial. I hope you found it helpful and can apply some of the things you learned in this video to your own Recoil trader.